ZStudy tablet, your child's gateway to learning, with no internet required, preloaded with courses that empower students to acquire valuable skills, plus interactive virtual labs and a library of digital books. It is the perfect solution for learners everywhere, even in remote areas. No internet? No worries. ZStudy, education digitized.
There are times when you might feel aimless and can't see the places where you belong, but you will find that there is a purpose. It's been there within you all along, and when you're near it, you can almost hear it. It's like a symphony, just keep listening, and pretty soon you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece in their own melodies, and each one of us, oh, it's glorious. And you will know how to let it ring out as you discover who you are. Others around you will start to wake up to the sounds that are in their hearts. It's so amazing what we're all creating. It's like a symphony, just keep listening, and pretty soon you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece in their own melodies, and each one of us, oh, is glorious. And as you feel the notes build, you will see. It's like a symphony, just keep listening, and pretty soon you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece in their own melody. Each one of us, oh, is glorious.
Hi, so I guess all of you have heard about AI or artificial intelligence. So basically, artificial intelligence is a system on a computer that is smart enough to reason similar to a human way of reasoning. That's why we call it artificial, because it's made up. With all the trends and growth in AI, people in the rural places have not benefited from the benefits that artificial intelligence has to offer, particularly in the educational sector. Young people in the rural Zambia and rural African villages, they have not benefited or actually even understood or even been exposed to artificial intelligence. Because of that, at Hero Control Systems, particularly with our ZStudy project, we are coming up with an initiative. We are calling it RARE. RARE is a Rural Artificial Intelligence Access Initiative, where we are building or assembling computers like this that runs AI on them, so that we can be able to deploy these particular computers in rural villages where there's no connectivity, there's no access to computers and all that. But you can be able to deploy these in very typical places with locally trained AI models that runs on our computers like that, so that children can be able to benefit from the power of AI, to be exposed to artificial intelligence and what the future holds. Because if we do not do this, we are creating a digital divide. This is where we are raising a population of people in rural areas who are out of sync with the realities of the advancement of technology, which is not good for national development and unity, especially in social and economical wise. So in this case, we have come up with this initiative to ensure that we provide this equitable access to artificial intelligence for children in rural places. I'm presenting to you a course that will cover the modern educational technologies that will help you remain relevant. How do we use AI to fundamentally improve how a teacher should be able to interact with the learners?
A STEM kit is basically a kit that allows you to teach almost all these acronyms that are in there. If you are teaching about a hat as an example, a child can put on these virtual reality goggles and be able to actually see what exactly is happening in a hat, and they can be able to see the arteries and all those chambers of the hat. People who are curious, they always find better ways of doing things. What is innovation? Innovation is taking paper and finding another use of paper other than just writing. Virtual labs are laboratories that are in virtual space, such as a computer. Having to understand knowledge like this, it will set you apart. It will definitely set you apart.
Today in STEM we are learning about robots and motors and what they do.
Robot is something that can do daily human tasks and act like a human. Robots use motors. There are different kinds of motors, DC motor and an AC motor.
A DC motor can go forward and back, and also is mostly well known for that it's got batteries. So it is a battery like you can see. So it doesn't use this batteries around and it uses this battery because the batteries are portable and movable.
Okay. So we use batteries because they are?
They are movable, so people can carry them around all day. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Engineer Kefas Kalembo, a STEM trainer, an advocate for STEM and everything good education. I'm presenting to you a course sponsored by ZStudy. The course is the 21st Century Classroom, STEM and Robotics for Teachers. So in this particular course, we'll cover a number of things. So the things that we'll cover in this particular course will range from comparing CBE with traditional learning. So what we'll do in here is that we're looking at competence-based education, which will dissect further into competence-based teaching, competence-based learning, and then we also look at how to go about that. How does that differ with traditional learning? And then we'll go and look at STEM and STEM education tools. What tools do we use in STEM education? What STEM education is, and everything to do with STEM.
And then we'll move forward to go and look at robotics and coding for teachers. So there's this prominent word that's coming, robotics and coding. And so we'll go ahead and look at how does that affect the way the teacher is expected to deliver. Should the teacher know coding in this time and era? Is it necessary? Which kind of teachers? Does an English teacher need to know coding? So it will be quite an interesting conversation around there. Then we'll look at simulation. Then we'll look at virtual labs. And then we'll look at multimedia in education. We'll look at that. Then we'll move ahead and look at artificial intelligence or AI. And we'll look at teachers' approach to 21st century classrooms. Then after that, we'll look at teachers' tools box in modern academia. Yes, a teacher needs to have a tools box. Then you go ahead and look at educational technology and virtual tours. So we'll look at what educational technology trends are there and how can we use that in virtual tours and other things. Then finally, we'll carry out a survey. So this survey, we're calling it a survey of expectations. Now, basically, what we'll do there is that what does a modern learner expect from a teacher? So we'll go around some few schools and do a survey so that at least we just get that first-hand information. So this is what this course is going to cover, and see you in there. Now, to begin, we're going to start with understanding the concept of competence-based education. Now, with competence-based education, what we will do is that we look at issues that has to do with competence-based education, and we'll further look at what should we expect in this competence-based education. Competence is basically the combination of skills. Of course, first is knowledge. Okay, the combination of knowledge, then skill, and then what we can call attitudes. Okay, this is how we can define this, what we can call attitudes. So this attitude could be personal, it could be psychosocial, this is psychological, or social influenced, and other, societal experiences. So we'll dive into details to understand what this competence-based education could be. Now, under competence-based, we are going to go in details and look at introduction to, competence-based education. Then we'll look at comparing competence-based education with traditional learning. Then we'll look at benefits for adult learners. Then we'll look at structure and interaction in competence-based subjects. And then we'll go and look at assessment and grading in competence-based education. Then we look at flexibilities and deadlines. Then we look at the perspective of your employers who are asking you to do that. What are their expectations? Then we'll ask a question, is competence-based right for Zambia? Is competence-based right for Zambia? So these are the things that would cover in this particular session. See you in the next lesson. Thank you. Welcome to the course. Now we focus on understanding competence-based education. As you may be aware, the government of Zambia, through the Ministry of Education under the Curriculum Development Center, they have revised the syllabus, and in there you find now that in most of the subject, if not all, when you're teaching, is a requirement for you to have competence-based approach. Now there's a content that is competence-based content, and there's competence-based education, which means that as a teacher, you need to be able to deliver the competence-based lessons so that your learners would be able to benefit from that kind of teaching. Now, I'll take the time here. Why competence-based? So, competence-based comes as a result of certain agenda that society or government want to achieve. Now, what should happen is that we need to train learners to have certain competencies that they need to solve certain community problems, society problem, national developmental problems. That's what breeds to, the need for revision of syllabus to have the competence approach in the delivery of education to the learner. Now, to understand this, we are going to cover, number one, we are going to cover the Welcome to the course. Now we focus on understanding competence-based education. As you may be aware, the government of Zambia, through the Ministry of Education under the Curriculum Development Center, they have revised the syllabus, and in there you find now that in most of the subject, if not all, when you're teaching, is a requirement for you to have competence-based approach. Now, there's a content that is competence-based content, and there's competence-based education, which means that as a teacher, you need to be able to deliver the competence-based lessons so that your learners would be able to benefit from that kind of teaching. Now, I'll take the time here. Why competence-based? So, competence-based comes as a result of certain agenda that society or government want to achieve. Now, what should happen is that we need to train learners to have certain competencies that they need to solve certain community problems, society problem, national developmental problems. That's what breeds to, the need for revision of syllabus to have the competence approach in the delivery of education to the learner. Now, to understand this, we are going to cover, number one, we are going to cover the, introduction to competence-based education. Then we'll look at the comparative approach between, CBE or competence-based education with traditional learning. Now, then we look at what benefits does this offer to the learner? Okay, what benefit does that offer to the learner? Like that. Then we'll look at structure and the interaction with the competent-based education, or CBE in short. And then we'll move on to look at assessment and grading in CBE. Then we'll move forward to go and look at flexibility and deadlines in terms of the way the lesson should be delivered, the project, the assignment, and things like that. Then we'll look at what does your employer expect from this CBE. Then we'll also now go to ask a question to say, is competent or competence-based education, CBE, right for Zambia? So let's get into it. In the introduction to competence-based education, we look at what does this mean? So competence-based education, as defined, is a transformative approach that emphasizes the acquisition of practical skills, critical thinking, and problem-solving abilities. Now we are saying it's about practical skills. So the key word here is skill. Okay. Critical thinking. The key word here is thinking. And problem-solving abilities. Problem-solving abilities. The key word here is ability. Now, unlike traditional teaching models, CBE, or competence-based education, shifts the focus from rote memorization to enabling learners to apply knowledge in real-world situations. This approach is critical for Zambia as it aligns with the country's developmental goals outlined in the 8th National Development Plan, or 8NDP. By equipping learners with competencies required for the modern workforce, competence-based education, or CBE, fosters innovation, self-reliance, adaptability, contributing to Zambia's socio-economical growth and global competitiveness. So this was extracted from the definitions from the government documents. Now, if we look at this kind of definition for competence-based education, CBE, what we can get quickly from here is that competence-based education is a combination of skill, which you acquire from knowledge, and then we have what we can call attitudes. Now, these attitudes could be personal, it could be psychosocial, it could be, life experiences, it could be genetic and all that. Now, this CBE, the best and simple way we can understand it, because you can't teach what you don't understand. So what you're trying to do here is to distill this so that we understand it in simpler terms. So what we mean is that, what is a competence? The best way to understand is that a driver goes to driving school, okay? Driving school to acquire driving skills and a driving license, DL. Now, here in this particular case, what you're saying is that this is the learner in your class, and this is the school, and what we should expect as output from your learner is that they need to have certain skills. Now, in order to have these certain skills, we should give them a qualification. These skills it's dependent on these attitudes, because not everyone is good in a particular way, and I will define that as we go. So, I'll give an example, a definition of what I understand should be this. So, in terms of the competence-based education, what we expect is that a selective collection of knowledge, skill, and attitudes should be able to give an outcome of, ability to do a job, or ability to do a quantitative, result that are measurable. That's what this is all about. So I'll give an example here, that in competence-based education, for instance, you would be teaching a grade 6 or grade 7. Now, if you're teaching this class, you are teaching them about bases, okay? Mathematics, that's mathematics. You're teaching them mathematics, you're teaching them about bases. The question is, what competencies do we expect for the learners to get from here? Because of course they'll get the knowledge, which they have been getting all along, okay? Now, what kind of skills are they going to get out of learning that kind of a topic in mathematics? And then, what kind of competence are they going to get out of this? Okay? So, with use of tools or resources such as the ZStudy STEM kit, what we could see here is that this particular learner, after they understand, they acquire the knowledge of bases. Base 2, as it is known, is also the same as binary numbers. So this is binary numbers, or basically the number system in which they learn base 2, base 10, base 8, base 16, and all that. So now this binary, what can they do with this in real life to solve a problem? So using tools or resources such as the ZStudy STEM kit, you'd see that we have logic gates around this here. We have logic gates. So what you could find then is that mathematics would find a direct application here on how we can apply the knowledge of binary numbers to logic gates. So from there, we could be able to understand that in computer systems or in computers, we use binary numbers to manipulate information, such as if we put a 0 here on a NOT gate, if we put a 0 there on the NOT gate, we would expect a 1 on the output, like that. So from there, they have that skew. Now, can they be able to do something that's quantitative and measurable? Can they be able to have an ability to perform a job? That's what competence is. He's a competent driver. He's a competent typist. You have acquired knowledge, skills, and attitudes that allows you to perform a job, that gives you abilities to perform a job. So if a learner understands this, are they able to perform something that is quantitative and measurable? Can they have the abilities to deliver a job? That's what we can simply look at what competence-based education is. Clearly here, we could see that one challenge would arise. What could that be? Prior knowledge. There's an assumption here. There's an assumption that these learners have prior knowledge. They have prior knowledge to this particular competence-based approach that we are suggesting. Because the best way to acquire a competence is to have a prior knowledge. Okay? I will explain that in details. For instance, if somebody goes to driving school, they'll acquire the knowledge. We sit for an exam in a driving school, as an example. So we sit in a class where we are taught. We are taught signs. We are taught road signs. We are taught, rules. We are taught the highway code and the rules that goes with that. We get that knowledge. Now we go to sit for the exam. That's easily measurable with the way we perform. Then from there, we now go to drive on the road. When you are driving now to be certified competent driver, the instructor is basing the assessment on the knowledge that prior to that particular test, I acquired. So they will expect for me, if I'm at a crossroad, how do I perform when I'm there? If I'm turning, what should I do? Because I have prior knowledge. Now I'm being certified to be competent driver. I should indicate, things like that. So there's an assumption here that in here, a child should be able to have some prior knowledge in order for them to actually perform better in this. Now, if we move further, we'll also recognize that if we compare competence-based education with traditional education, if we compare competence-based education with traditional education, we'll realize quickly that with traditional education, we focus more on knowledge acquisition of knowledge. Okay, that is the focus: acquisition of knowledge, like that, acquisition of knowledge. Okay, acquisition of knowledge. While on competence-based, we focus on acquisition of competencies. I'm calling them competencies, competencies. Okay, like that, competencies. So now this is a collection of skills, okay, knowledge, and expertise. Okay, towards expertise. So this is what in competence education, what is expected. It's a combination of that. If you know binary numbers or base 2 numbers, show us how. That's what competence says. If you look at here, it's saying show how. So you have to prove that, yes, I know binary numbers, not just by knowledge, but what can you do with that? That's what competence-based education requires. It requires that somebody should be able to show how is that knowledge useful. Okay, you show how you claim that you have this knowledge. Okay, then if we move, we are also saying that competence-based. We are also saying that competence-based is student-centered. So it's student-centered in that particular manner. It's student-centered, all right? And it's not teacher-centered. It focuses on a student and it's centralized on skills, like we have seen in that particular manner. So we are also saying that in competence-based, it's student-centrale. Okay, it's student or learner-centrale. Student centrality. Student centrality. Okay, it's student centrality. The other thing that you see that also it's skills focused. It's skills focused in that particular manner. While this side, in addition to knowledge, it's teacher centrale. It's focused on the teacher. Okay, centrality. So it's centered at the teacher, the lesson plan, and what that lesson plan could deliver in a classroom and other things. In addition to that, this particular also focuses on what we call path. Focuses on the path. Focuses on the path. So it focuses on the syllabus, in other words. Okay, it focuses on the syllabus like that. So like how far have we covered? At this time, we are supposed to move from this point to that particular point, and we quickly evaluate the students through, tests and exams and things like that. So this is how these two approaches differs in that particular manner. So with CBE, we move from knowledge, we go to competencies, then from competencies, we go to performances, and then from there, we go to expertise. So this is how this moves. So you know, and the know-hows, you get the knowledge, and then you show the how, that is a competence, and then from there, you move to performance. You do it so that people could be able to see. And then from there, and from doing, this is a point of feedback, whether this is working or not. And as you keep doing and the feedback is being given continuously, of course, somebody becomes an expert in that particular approach. We can give an example here. In medical school, I have observed that there is more of competence-based education. For instance, if one is studying to become a medical doctor, they will take few years that focuses on knowledge. Few years that focuses on knowledge. Maybe we can say year 1 to year 3, or sometimes year 4. They'll focus much on getting the knowledge. Then when they reach year 4, all the way up to year 7, it's all about competencies. It's all about competencies. Now, what you're saying here is that these people go to what they call clinicals, where they work in the hospital. They actually work with the patients. And through this process, you see that they acquire the knowledge they acquired, they apply it to skills, and then using their attitudes. These are inner things to the learners, the attitudes. They now define on how they would, perform better based on their personalities. What kind of a doctor could they turn out to be? And this plays a huge role, and it influences what kind of, persons people become, despite the knowledge they get and the skills they get. Because these are hard to change. They are acquired through them due to experiences and the backgrounds and difference in the psychosocial, composition of learners and things like that. Now, we look at the benefits for a learner. Now, if we are looking at the benefits for the learner, we are saying that competence-based education, CBE, allows learners to study at their own pace, fitting courseworks around personal abilities. All right? So what this means is that there are people who understand more by doing. They understand more by doing. I'm one of those people. So if I'm doing something, I understand it faster. Then I go back to the theory to cement. Okay? Then I go back to the theory to cement my understanding. My learning sometimes looks like this. If I want to learn about a new processor that is on the market, I'll quickly buy that particular processor, start tinkering with it based on some, innate information that I have. And then after I grasp a bit and I fail and all that, then I come back to read the data sheet. Now, after I read the data sheet, that's basically the theory. Then it becomes easier for me to understand because I'll be able to relate with what I saw on the practical side of that particular processor. As an example, as in my approach when I'm working with electronics and my engineering background, I approach things in that particular manner. So this is what you're saying, that competence-based allows people to do things in their way. Let them try and fail, then they assume the theory, and then they assimilate the theory, and then from there, they go back to the practical and back and forth, and that becomes important. Then we are also saying that in terms of prior knowledge, there's what we are saying, that students can advance quickly through material they already understand, through practicals, like I've just alluded to earlier, saving time and focusing on new concept. So as I'm reading through the theory, because I did a bit of practical, I saw certain things as I was practicing with that particular example I gave of a processor. I have prior knowledge of how that thing looks like. If they say this is connected there, I know exactly where they're referring to. So it becomes easier for me to quickly connect, and I save time in there and focus on concept that I failed to understand when I was trying to think around. Tailored learning experience. CB approach often offer customized pathways. As you know, this is a big issue in the new curricula where we are talking about pathways. Catering to individual learning style, life or society expected abilities for better engagement. So what do we mean? What we mean is, because these competences is not just acquiring knowledge, but you are also, acquiring skills and actual competencies. We realize that we need to streamline pathways through which the learners should be able to follow, based on what? Based on, the learning styles, which are individualized, based on, society expected abilities for better engagement, and many other things. Now, what we could see here is that attitudes, as we defined, plays roles. As you could see there is individual, which means personal, okay? Circumstances and other, issues. And then we look at the learning style, which also goes into that personal. Then we also look at societal expectations and abilities. So these are psychosocial issues. Okay. Then we also look at, the issue of abilities. These certain people are good at math naturally through their DNA makeup. Of course, everyone can learn anything, but they have got unfair advantage due to their genetic makeup. So this also requires that we have streamlined in terms of abilities to go into, pathways that suits to their personal, preferences and style, their psychosocial issues, and their abilities, maybe genetical or others. So the problem that we have with the way the curriculum-based, the competence-based education has come with the new curriculum requiring pathways and all that is, do we have strong, career guidances that helps to go beyond what the expression of passion that a child has shown to understand these issues that we are raising in attitudes, so that as this we are putting these children in pathways. Because, for instance, a grade 8 child or a Form 1 child who just is graduating from grade 7 going into Form 1 does not have enough life experience to solidly define their passions and understand their pathways, that I'll be good at mathematics, so let me go into the natural science pathway. Parents who choose, and I'm speaking to teachers and head teachers, they already understand that parents have a tendency of pushing their children into natural sciences because they'll become engineers, Kalembos of this world, they would become, medical doctors, they would become all those things. But that is not the case. I remember in university, there are a lot of people who go there with intention of to go and study medicine, because this is how they have been pushing all the way, with intention of, medical doctors are paid very well. There is that economical attachment and motivation that is there. But that's not always the case. So we are lacking in the way that, yes, the competence-based education requires streamlined pathways. But the problem here is that we do not have strong career guidance background that allows to help, choose and correctly streamline learners into these pathways. How many schools have psychologists stationed at the schools? How many schools in Zambia, both even private and government, have proper functioning career guidance departments? Very few. That is a response. So yes, it's important to have these particular pathways and all that, but the problem is that we have a weak career guidance and psychology departments within these schools that should be able to pay attention to the development of a child as they are developing from kindergarten, as they go and in their early childhood classes, up to the moment when we need to streamline them into different pathways. Thank you so much. We end here. See you in the next lesson. Thank you. At looking at how the structure of the subject should look like, considering the anatomy of the interaction. We went to look at things like how the course should be delivered, in what kind of an environment. So basically just dissecting the anatomy of the entire delivery of a lecture or a course in the content-based. But today we'll proceed to go and look at assessment and grading in CBE. So basically what we're looking at here is, how do we assess, how do we grade in the content-based? Of course, the CDC, or that's a Curriculum Development Center, in collaboration or working together with the Ministry of Education, they have guided on how this should be, as I will show you in the next lesson, on how this, from coming up with a lesson plan, what expectations should you set for the learner and things like that. But in this particular case, let's look at the competence-based education and how the assessment and grading is done. So we are here. So basically what we're saying here, that we need to identify the competencies. We need to be able to identify the competencies. Instructors should be able to outline specific competencies that students or learners should be able to demonstrate their proficiency in each subject, reflecting essential skills needed in the field. So if you go to teach mathematics, and in an example that you saw in the earlier course, you are teaching about number system. You are teaching about number system. That's what you're teaching about, number system. And so let's say you are focusing on base 2, or binary number system.
Now, if this is what you're focusing on as you're teaching a grade 7 child, what kind of specific competence or what kind of specific proficiency to reflect essential skills from this course or from this subject matter that you're delivering in a given topic do you want a child to get away with? So you should be able to outline the competencies. You should be able to map that knowledge to that particular competencies. So in an example where we gave an example of looking at ZStudy STEM kit, we looked at the ZStudy STEM kit. Okay. Now, when we looked at the ZStudy STEM kit, what we realized is that we can be able to apply, that particular knowledge that the learners acquired through something that we called electronics in not gets. So this is a not get, like that. So after you explain counting in binaries, and all that, fundamentally you want a child to be able to manipulate to say when you apply a 0 on the not get, what you'd expect is that you're going to get a 1. So computers thinks in this particular manner, and you could even go further to look at, where this is applied, where this is applied. In an example, we could say this is applied in inverting signals, e.g. inverting signals, okay, in inverting signals. So what is a signal? An example is sound. Sound is a form of a signal. So if you want to invert or to change a signal into the opposite form in which it came, you could be able to use a not get to do that. Now, you allow learners to be able to play with this particular ZStudy STEM kit so they can acquire that competence, and you map how this knowledge could be able to be used. So that's how that might look like. So what you're seeing here is that you're building, young innovators, young engineers, young technologists, young scientists who knows how to apply that knowledge that they have acquired into, a skill, and which they can now further acquire competences through application of such skills. If we look at project assessment, now from here we can give these learners a project. An example is that you can give them a project to say, we can be able to give them a project that they could be able to use a not get from here, as you see as we go. So now students complete projects that require applying learned concepts that you have learned from here, to real-world scenarios, showcasing their understanding through tangible outputs. They should be able to, submit the project, and then they should be able to have a workbook or work products that are around that particular project. So in a particular case like this, you'll be able to see that I would run my lesson in a manner that I'll give these children a project. Maybe I could say this is a weekly project, so I would tell them to say on a ZStudy STEM kit, okay, on a ZStudy STEM kit, okay, develop, a project that turns on a light when main power goes. So I'll be able to give these learners to come up with a project like that, to say, when load shedding has happened, develop a project using a ZStudy STEM kit such that we should be able to be notified through a light, okay, through a light. So a certain light should go on, say red. So when you see a light that's red goes on, then that would tell us that ZESCO is not there. We are maybe using solar at that particular time. So these learners would be able to, among other things, you could be able to see that they would be able to, this would be a bigger project, but particularly on what they have learned, they would be able to apply to say, if ZESCO is available at this point, we could be able to tap that and, pass it through something that we can so call a controller, which could be giving us a 5 volts. So these 5 votes will only be present when mens is present, or when we have ZESCO. Mens is ZESCO, in other words. So if ZESCO is present, this will be giving us 5 votes. An example of this is, like in your house, you have seen a TV. There will be a red light when there's power, and when there's no power, that red light will not be there. Okay, so that's an example we're looking at. So we have got this controller here. When ZESCO is there, it will be giving 5 votes. Then we can get these 5 votes. Then we can get these 5 votes, and then feed it into the NOT gate. Okay, feed it into the NOT gate. At the end of the NOT gate, we can now have a red bulb, or brackets LED, light emitting diode. We can have that there. So this is your NOT. So this is a concept that you had taught the children earlier through binary numbers. Now they are applying that in a project. Now what you're going to see here is that these learners would be able to use this and apply it to this project. Now in this case of this project is that when ZESCO is present, what you'll be feeding here is a 1. Okay? Now because we know that this NOT gate inverts a 1 to a 0, so what you'll be having here is a 0. Remember, you'd have already taught them 1 is equivalent to 5 votes. 0 is equivalent to 0 votes in that particular manner. So if you have 1 here, or basically 5 votes, what you'll be seeing this side is a 0. So basically you'll be seeing 0 votes. Okay. As soon as this power goes, when ZESCO is not present, which is equal to that, what you're going to see is that this will be inverted to a 1 on the other side. So there will be 5 votes present, which is going to turn on this particular bulb. So they would have done that particular project there. This is how we expect if we are going to implement the competence-based education. This is how it should look like. That's how competence-based education would look like. Now, these children would have done this project, submit it, and all that. Then we now come to feedback. Okay, so we are done with this one. Now we move to feedback. Now we come to feedback. Now, under feedback, the instructor, who is basically the teacher, provides feedback on projects that has been submitted. In this case, this ZESCO indicator, like that. Okay, provide the feedback, allowing learners to revise their work, perfect where they made a mistake. This process encourages mastery and deeper understanding of material, pushing a learner towards expertise. As you remember, we say that knowledge, care, would lead to what we called skills. Okay, skills. Now, under skills, we talked about competencies. Okay, which competencies we say is knowledge, skill, and attitude. Okay, like that. And then this is going now to lead to, performance. Okay, it's going to lead to performance. Now, performance is further going to lead to expertise. Okay, it's going to lead to expertise. Okay, so that's how that's going to flow in that particular manner, to lean towards that. Now, feedback would be in form of a report, feedback reports, revised submission from the learner. So this is a feedback report from the teacher. This is a feedback revised submission from the learner. So this is for the learner giving a revised submission, and this is from the teacher giving a feedback report. Perhaps this would be done in groups, so also encouraging learners to know collaboration, to know confidence, to have ability to understand that to be great in life is to learn to work with others. So all that will be something that will be learned through this. So that's how competence-based would be done. Now we get to final evaluation. Now students receive credit, okay, after demonstrating mastery of all competences through project completion and revision, ensuring high standards are met. Now from here, you're going to get your course credit and then competence confirmation. Now what you're seeing from here is basically that the kind of a learner that we're producing in this particular sense is not somebody who just have knowledge. It's not just about knowledge. Okay? It's not just about remembering. Okay? It's not just about one size fits all. So it's not one-sided, kind of evaluation where you just see, oh, okay, did Kefa's answer 2 plus 2 is equals to 3? As you could have seen here, someone can just remember to say binary 0 and 1 and to a conversion and all that. No, but it goes beyond from the knowledge all the way towards solving real-life solutions. Okay, so these are community-based issues like that, or problems if you want to call them, from knowledge in a classroom, from knowledge in a classroom, knowledge in the classroom. So this is how assessment and grading in CBE and those stages should be followed properly in that particular manner. Okay. Thank you so much. In the next lesson, we are going to look at these in terms of now we look at the time flexibility in terms of administering competence-based education to learners in a fixed classroom, in a traditional classroom like that. So now, owing to the fact that most of the places in which CBE will be delivered in Zambia, the infrastructure and resources are tied to a brick and mortar classroom where time becomes a factor. Now, in terms of the subject completion timeline with content-based learning with the popular known 40 minutes period, how then does a teacher, have enough time in this particular period to be able to deliver the content-based learning or teaching? Now, courses have a general deadline for completion, including the lesson itself. You are supposed to deliver that lesson in the specific time period, and in most cases in Zambia, this is 40 minutes. But students can set their own pace within that time frame. How? If the lesson is handled in a particular manner such that there is a lesson to acquire knowledge, so that this now comes to act as a prior knowledge, and then there's a lesson to acquire skills, and then there's a lesson for competence. Now, in this particular case, what's going to happen is that if a learner didn't understand much from this point, they will solidify it here. And also as they do their projects and their practical hands-on learning, that becomes another opportunity to actually finalize or cement whatever they didn't understand properly. Now, learners who choose to finish the work early in terms of the project, they can do so to allow to look into revisions and feedback that is provided to them so they can further refine the projects based on the feedback from the instructors. Now, tailored study plans, this is when this is being used to adult education, like those who comes back to continue their education. They can create personalized study schedules that allow them to focus on assignments when it's most convenient for them. So they can do, the competence, the skills or the practicals at their own time of convenience. Now, in terms of time management, this would be very tricky in terms of the 40 minutes period, because for the most part, to do a good project, it might take an hour. So how does this then fit in our common 40 minutes period time in which we deliver? Sometimes people do have 2 periods. So I hope that most of the content-based learning could be handled in the 2-period time, so that maybe 20 minutes, some theory is done and all that, and then 60 minutes, we do the hands-on when you're looking at the CBE in that particular manner. Now, what do we expect? Now here I'm calling this as the employer perspective on CBE. Now this employer is us. What do I mean by us? The community. What do I mean by the community? The government. What we are expecting from this is to have competencies that solves community issues. That's what we expect. The biggest challenge that we'll have will be cost. Second would be teacher competence. Third would be time. So these are the major challenges that we'll face in this. Number one, cost. In terms of the materials, in order for you to acquire a competence, you need materials to be able to use. As you saw in my delivery, I used an example of the ZStudy STEM kit. I used an example of the ZStudy STEM kit. I used an example of the ZStudy virtual lab. I used an example of Google Earth, among other things. There's something that is in common with all this, and that is cost. In order for you to acquire this, it's a cost. In order for you to acquire this, it's a cost. In order for you to acquire this, that's another cost. There's that cost of all this that is needed. How our labs operates now in most of the government schools does not meet the standards of the CBE lessons. This is one issue that would hamper the expected benefits in terms of the perception or the perspectives from the employer side, the government, the people, the community, to implement this specific section of the new curriculum. This will be quite challenging. Okay, because labs are mostly non-functional. Now, we'll get back to these things when you look at other things as we proceed in the course. When you look at educational technologies, we look at the tools and other things. Another thing that will be a problem is the teacher competence, which is what I'm trying to actually even solve in this delivery. The teacher competence is that most of the teachers are not able to actually relate what the theory is about, the skills and the competencies. So you'd find that a grade 7 teacher who is teaching about number systems, okay, is not competent enough to understand things like logic gates and how those things, the computer system, the De Morgan's theory and the algebra to which we apply these fundamentals, okay, and be able to use them. We can use these number systems, the ones and zeros, to build, digital watches, Casio watch. Okay, Casio watch is built fundamentally on that principle, like that. Now, how many grade 7 or grade 5 or grade 6, whatever grade in between there, who handles these? Are they going to understand the intersection of the real world and the knowledge world, or the theory as we call it, and to sit here as a teacher, to sit here, okay, so that they are able to, flourish in both ends. That is a problem. And that's a simple example given there. It becomes even more problematic the lower we get in terms of the grades, because when you're dealing with younger ones, it even becomes more difficult. So there's a need for an agent teacher retraining, or CPDs, so that they can acquire competences to be able to deliver competence-based education. The other issue here is the issue to do with time. As I've already explained a bit about this, is that most of us periods are 40 minutes. it will be difficult to manage the CBE requirements plus the time requirement to sit there. That would be another problem. We move forward. As employers, what they expect from this is that there should be certain outcomes in terms of these. So we need to see an increased innovation that should come out of the communities based on this. We need to see, entrepreneurs, critical thinkers. We need to be able to see an improved solutions in the community. Problems. This is a community with problems. Problems such as load shedding, unplanned townships, water, air pollution, water pollution, and many other problems. Why the government has introduced the competence-based in the curriculum is to be able to have the knowledge that the learners are taught to solve specific things, to acquire specific knowledge in order to solve specific issues in the community cycle like that. That is the essence of CBE. Now, in terms of the project-based evidence, what you're going to see is that CBE should emphasize project-based assessment, allowing graduates or these learners from these classes and schools as they leave to showcase tangible work products which can enhance their employment prospects and contribute to societal issues as solutions themselves. That is what we are expecting. Us, the community, the government, that's their perspective. That's what you're trying to achieve with this. That's what you're trying to achieve with this. Now, is CBE right for Zambia? So competence-based education is ideal for learners who have a bit of prior knowledge and experience in the field, allowing them to progress at their own pace. We have tackled this, the importance of having prior knowledge. So the teacher should ensure that they deliver. There should be proper coordination in the way this syllabus should be able to operate, such that they deliver the math knowledge which they should come and use when they are looking at the CBE later on. They should be able to use this same math when they are looking at the CBE in physics or chemistry, like that. So the importance of building a bit of foundation before we get to the CBE content. Now, the other issue that will be there is that students with busy schedules, such as those who attend class in night, like the GCE, how are they properly planned to be integrated so that they don't find CBE inflexibility to be more frustrating than traditional educational formats? That is another problem that will be there. Now, consider your learning style suitable for your learners. Is the learning style is such that the learners will be able to thrive in self-directed environments, or prefer to demonstrate knowledge through projects rather than exams or theoretical learning and maybe good fit for them. So as a teacher, you should be able to look at this and be able to see whether the learners, which kind of learning style they should be able to thrive in, because we might not force everybody to this. But the good thing is that when the knowledge is provided prior, it will become easier for the learners, so that even if they missed something in the knowledge session, they should be able to capture something in the competence-based practical or hands-on session. One thing I should mention is that the intention of the formulators of CBE, the intention of the formulators of CBE is not to treat it as a lab, so that you teach in class, you give a lab. It's not like that, as if you have noticed the way the explanation has flourished. Now, the other thing is that teachers should be able to explore various resources which should help them, deliver properly in class. A teacher needs to build a tools box, a toolbox. A teacher needs to build a toolbox. Products such as the ZStudy virtual labs to help you get started in delivering competence-based STEM lessons would be very useful as you build your toolbox in this delivery. The problem, though, is that the largest chunk of teachers here were trained in an environment that did not prepare them for what we are talking about, which is this CBE. The other challenge also is the fact that most of the schools in Zambia, so this is the schools, lacks resources or materials that should allow CBE to flourish. So you see that in terms of Zambia, CBE is on the outside because we are lacking a lot of things. The way the time, the way the teacher competence, resources, teacher attitude, which also just falls under competence as we defined it to be knowledge, skill, and attitudes. So all these are problems that will stifle the expected results from the employer's perspective, which is us, the community. CBE is very good, very important, but we need to do more for it to perfectly fit and to be right for Zambia. Thank you so much. See you in the next chapters. Thank you.
Hi. So I guess all of you have heard about AI or artificial intelligence. So basically,
there are times when you might feel aimless and can't see the places where you belong, but you will find that there is a purpose. It's been there within you all along, and when you're near it, you can almost hear it. It's like a symphony. Just keep listening, and pretty soon you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece in their own melodies, and each one of us, oh, it's glorious. And you will know how to let it ring out as you discover who you are. Others around you will start to wake up to the sounds that are in their hearts. It's so amazing what we're all creating. It's like a symphony. Just keep listening, and pretty soon you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece in their own melodies, and each one of us, oh, is glorious. And as you feel the notes build, you will see. It's like a symphony. Just keep listening. listening. And pretty soon you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece and there are melodies in each one of us. Oh, it's glorious.
Hi. So I guess all of you have heard about AI or artificial intelligence. So basically, artificial intelligence is a system on a computer that is smart enough to reason similar to a human way of reasoning. That's why we call it artificial, because it's made up. Now, with all the trends and the growth in AI, people in the rural places have not benefited from the benefits that artificial intelligence has to offer, particularly in the educational sector. Young people in the rural Zambia and rural African villages, they have not benefited or actually been understood or even been exposed to artificial intelligence. Because of that, at Hero Control Systems, particularly with our ZStudy project, we are coming up with an initiative we are calling it RAI. RAI is Rural Artificial Intelligence Access Initiative, where we are building or assembling computers like this that runs AI on them, so that we can be able to deploy these particular computers in rural villages where there's no connectivity, there's no access to computers and all that. But you can be able to deploy these in very typical places with locally trained AI models that run on our computers like that, so that children can be able to benefit from the power of AI, to be exposed to artificial intelligence and what the future holds. Because if we do not do this, we're creating a digital divide. This is where we are raising a population of people in rural areas who are out of sync with the realities of the advancement of technology, which is not good for national development and unity, especially social and economic ones. So in this case, we have come up with this initiative to ensure that we provide equitable access to artificial intelligence for children in rural places.
There are melodies in each one of us.